There's a quiet phase almost every trader passes through. It doesn't announce itself loudly. There's no obvious failure, no dramatic blow-up. It's more subtle than that. You're not a beginner anymore. You understand the language. You know what people are talking about. You can follow the charts. You recognize patterns. You've read the books. You've watched the videos. And yet, you're still losing. Not recklessly, not ignorantly, but consistently enough to hurt. This phase is confusing because it feels like you should be past this by now. You've put in the time, you've done the work, you're not guessing blindly anymore. So why does it still feel unstable? This is the phase where knowledge stops being the problem and behavior becomes the enemy. Most traders never realize they've entered this phase. They think they're still learning, but what they're really doing is circling the same mistakes with better explanations. They can explain why they lost, they just can't stop doing it. And that's the most dangerous place to be. Because when ignorance disappears, ego quietly takes its place. You start to feel competent, not confident, competent. You know enough to justify your actions, enough to rationalize bad decisions, enough to sound disciplined, even when you aren't. This is the phase where traders don't lose because they don't know what to do. They lose because they don't do what they already know. And that creates a very specific kind of internal conflict. You sit in front of the screen and there's tension before the trade even appears. Not excitement, tension. A subtle pressure to participate, to prove that you're not wasting time, to prove that all this learning meant something. You're no longer chasing randomness, you're chasing validation. You want the market to confirm that you're progressing, that you're improving, that you're getting closer. So when price moves, even slightly, it feels like an invitation. And you start leaning forward. You don't jump in immediately like you used to. You hesitate, you analyze, you wait a little. But that waiting is uncomfortable now. Because you know what you're waiting for. At least you think you do. And when the moment doesn't arrive cleanly, your mind fills the gap. You start negotiating with yourself. It's not perfect, but it's close. I've seen this work before. If I size smaller, it's fine. I don't want to miss this one. This is not ignorance speaking. This is knowledge being bent by impatience. And that's why this phase feels so frustrating. You're not making rookie mistakes anymore. You're making experienced mistakes. They look cleaner, more logical, more defensible, but they hurt just as much. Sometimes more. Because now, after the loss, you can't hide behind confusion. You know exactly what you did wrong, and that awareness doesn't stop it from happening again. And that's the part nobody prepares you for. Knowing better doesn't automatically mean doing better. In fact, sometimes knowing more makes the struggle worse. Because now, every mistake feels personal. It feels like a flaw in your discipline, in your character, in your self-control. You start asking quieter questions. Why can't I just wait? Why do I still rush? Why do I break my own rules? And if you're honest with yourself, the answers are uncomfortable. It's not that you don't see the trap, it's that part of you still wants to step into it. Because this phase isn't about setups or execution. It's about identity. You've invested enough time that trading is no longer just something you do, it's something you are becoming. And when that identity feels threatened by boredom, by inactivity, by watching price move without you, your mind looks for relief. Action becomes emotional regulation. You click not because the trade is clear, but because the waiting is heavy. You tell yourself you're managing risk, but what you're really managing is discomfort. This is where traders get stuck for years. Not because they're incapable, but because this phase feels like progress while quietly stalling growth. You're busy, you're engaged, you're involved, but you're not transforming. And the market keeps reflecting that back to you. Small losses, choppy results, brief wins followed by erosion. Enough to keep hope alive, not enough to build stability. And that's the cruel balance of this phase. It doesn't punish you hard enough to force change. It just drains you slowly. You start tweaking things, not radically, just enough to feel proactive. A slight adjustment, a new filter, a different timing. You're not strategy hopping anymore. You're micro-adjusting to avoid facing the real issue, which is patience, restraint, emotional tolerance, the ability to let the market exist without needing to interact with it immediately. Most traders think patience means waiting for entries, but that's only the surface. Real patience is waiting without negotiating, waiting without lowering standards, waiting without narrating the market, waiting without needing to be right today. And that's far harder than it sounds. Because now you understand the market well enough to see possibilities everywhere. Every movement looks interpretable. Every structure looks tradable. Your knowledge expands the field of temptation. When you were new, you only saw obvious signals. Now you see nuance. And nuance is dangerous when discipline isn't fully integrated. This is why traders at this stage often over-interpret. They don't overtrade wildly, they over-justify. They don't chase randomness, they chase probability that isn't ripe yet. And afterward, they say the same thing. I was early. But early isn't unlucky. Early is impatient. And impatience here isn't loud. It's subtle, reasonable, convincing. It whispers instead of shouts. And because it whispers, it often wins. Another loss, another lesson you already knew, another journal entry repeating the same insight. You start noticing the repetition, the same emotional sequence, the same decision point, the same regret. And that's when something important starts to happen. You realize this isn't about learning anymore. It's about unlearning. Unlearning the need to act, unlearning the urge to prove progress, unlearning the belief that being busy equals being disciplined. This phase demands something different from you. Not more effort, not more screen time, not more study. It demands restraint. And restraint feels like stagnation at first. You sit there doing nothing while your mind screams that you're falling behind. Other traders are posting wins. The market is moving. Opportunities seem endless. And you're watching. This is where ego becomes restless. Because ego doesn't want consistency. It wants confirmation. It wants to feel smart, in control, ahead. And the market refuses to give that on demand. So you're faced with a choice most traders never consciously make. You can continue participating emotionally, staying active, involved, frustrated, hopeful. Or you can start observing yourself, not the charts, yourself. Why certain moments pull you in, why silence feels uncomfortable, why missing a move feels worse than losing money. This is the phase where awareness becomes more valuable than analysis, where the real work happens away from the entry button. You start noticing the gap between signal and action, that space where you decide, and you realize how rarely that space is actually quiet. It's full of narratives, assumptions, urgency, fear of wasting time. You thought discipline meant rules, but now you see it's something deeper. It's emotional neutrality, the ability to let the market exist without needing to interact with it immediately. That sounds simple? It's not. Because trading triggers something primal, the need to participate, to respond, to do. And this phase is where that instinct clashes with maturity. You already know what works, you just don't always choose it. And every time you don't, the disappointment is sharper. Because ignorance no longer protects you. Only honesty does. Slowly, if you stay long enough, something shifts. Not dramatically, not all at once. You start skipping trades without feeling guilty. You stop narrating every candle. You feel less urgency to be involved. The market becomes quieter, not because it changed, but because you did. Losses stop shocking you. Wins stop inflating you. Not because you're numb, but because you're less attached. you begin to understand something most traders miss. The goal isn't to trade well today, it's to become someone who trades well over time. And that identity is built in